And today's just going to be a continuation from Jamie collecting the F&A last week. And now I'm going to talk about what to do now that you have their information. And, all of your success that you'll have in the field and with clients is in your preparation. The first hardest part for most people is, like Olivia was talking about, kind of the discomfort of asking those questions. Honestly, personally, I've never had a problem asking the questions. I've never felt weird about it. But how many guys kind of feel weird about asking some of the questions as Jamie was going through? I mean, for whatever reason, a lot of people have that. So I can see on my screen enough of you with your hands up where you're not alone, right? There's a bunch of you. And it's one of the challenges. So the only way to overcome it is just to ask. And what you'll find is almost nobody has a barrier to giving you the answers for those things. And then once you have the information, now it's like, okay, what's next? What do I do? Okay, so that's going to be today. Now, I'm not going to go into detail as far as entering the F&A and kind of the outcomes, but what I'm going to do is give you all of the things that you want to have before you go back to that family. And so we're not doing presentations, we're not doing the close, we're not doing any of that. You'll see it though when we go over the close, how it ties in all of the information and why it's so important to have it ahead of time. But first thing, where should I start? So when Jamie was going through this stuff with Sarah and Kaysen, they were not, it was like kind of the perfect couple, even though they were making up most of the stuff as far as numbers go and everything else. Some of you were probably thinking like, man, that's pretty bold. They're like giving us every single one of their details on their financial lives in front of all of us. That was, most of it was made up, but what wasn't made up is that they are married. They do have kids. They do, and Kaysen was in construction. All the stuff that they were talking about from that end was real, right? And so if we're going to go back to them, the nice thing, all the information that they gave us hit kind of all the spaces. It hit debt, it hit insurance, it hit, their retirement, school for their kids, all of the things that are important to most of the people that we're going to see. Okay, so first thing I would say, as far as preparation, on the debt side, we have a lot of people ask, oh, what do you show for debt? What do we do for debt? Do we have a debt consolidation company? Do we have all of those things? We do have some companies that we deal with that do debt help, right? Where they will kind of consolidate some of the debt and put your clients on a payment plan, where it's a single pay, pays off all of their things, and they do it for them, and it pays it off faster. And negotiation on some of the debt and things like that. But what I'll tell you is if we use those companies, it is going to negatively affect their credit. And it's one of those things that we try and avoid those recommendations out of the gates as much as we can. And instead, what we try and do is just show them some ways for them to restructure what they have going on, to pay it off faster. All right. So there's a bunch of different, again, I'm not going to recommend any one specific site or anything else. But what I do most of the time, what we try and do is we recommend like the debt snowball or the debt avalanche. It's a kind of way to paying off their debt. Debt snowball, I'm pretty sure Dave Ramsey's the guy who came up with it originally, or at least that kind of has the the trademark on it or whatever else, for that idea. But it's been around forever. And what it is, if you have all of their different, whether it's credit cards, consumer debt card, whatever, you have all of the interest, the payments. When Jamie was gathering the information, the most important thing is that you gather the right information. How she was mentioning when it comes to insurance, most people don't know what coverage they have. So it's important to ask them to get their statements And if you don't have the statements, most of the time they're going to be wrong. But it's especially true for credit cards. Almost nobody knows how many of you guys have credit cards and even know what interest you're paying on your credit cards. It's almost nobody, right? Like I see one hand. I see everybody else shaking their heads like I have no idea, right? It's almost nobody knows how much interest they're paying. Almost nobody knows what their actual balance is. Almost nobody knows what their actual minimum payments are. Right. I mean, it's just kind of like one of those things that people have all this debt and they don't even really know what they have. Right. So it's make sure you get all of that. When you have all of it, then there's programs. Maybe some of you guys that use it a bunch can put some of the websites in the chat of where you can go in and enter those numbers. And the best ones will they'll give you two options. They'll show you how much faster you can pay it off if you restructure and you pay it off by the highest interest first. And they'll have a second option that will show you how long it'll take you to pay off if you pay the smallest balance first. There's kind of two ways to do it. Does that make sense? Now, between the two, if I'm being totally honest, even if somebody can pay it off faster by paying the highest interest first, I will tell you just through human nature and personal experience, you're better off and people are more likely to stick to it and pay it off faster if you help them knock off their lowest balance first. Even if numbers say that they'll do it faster by paying off the higher interest, just a human nature thing, like people want wins. And if you can knock out a smaller balance and get rid of one of the debts and then move that up to the next thing, that's going to be to their advantage. So I'll tell you, it'll be to most people's advantage if whichever one you're using shows knocking down that smaller balance first and doing it that way. Okay, so now what's the debt snowball? It's basically, let's say they have 5 credit cards. You know, their minimum payments combined with all the 5 credit cards are, let's just say, $300. Okay, and they're paying $600 towards their credit cards every single month. So they have an extra $300 that they're paying towards their knocking down their debt every single month. But they're just spreading out the $300 through the 5 cards, right? So they're adding an extra $60 a card. Does that make sense? An extra $60 a payment, which is what most people do. They just pay a little extra on every single payment and hope to knock it down faster. Right? Oh, I'll just put $100 to each card and regardless of what the minimum is and whatever. So what the debt snowball is, instead of spreading it out to all the cards, you take the entire $300 and just put it towards one of them. Everything else, you just pay the minimum payment. Right? So now if the one with the lowest balance has a minimum of $50 and you're going to put an extra $300 towards all those payments, you're going to be putting $350 to the one card instead of 60 in each. Okay. Now the key to this is you're obviously going to pay that one off faster. Let's say that person has let's just call it a $1,000 balance on that small balance out of the 5 cards. Well, that's going to be paid off now in 3 months. Now, after the 3 months, now they're going to have the $350 payment that they were paying because the minimum was $50. You take that entire $350 and add it to the next card. So let's say the next card has a minimum payment of $50 still. Now you're going to be putting $400 into that card every single month. Does that make sense? And then you just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay. So that's the debt thing. So most of the debt stuff we go back with. So you're going to have to spend some time. Number one, you do the research, you enter the numbers, you have, all of like the order of how they're going to pay it. And a lot of those websites, by the way, that have the little calculators for it will have a little thing that you can print out that kind of like shows them how to do it. But most of the time you're just going to explain it, right? You can even write it. Like when I do it, I'll kind of write the balances and stuff on the screen with just the notepad on your iPad, right? You write it out and you show them, make sure it's clear. And then you show them how much faster they'll pay off that debt by doing it. And by the way, when they do it, most of the time, they'll knock it down way faster. I mean, most of the time it'll knock years off of how long it takes them to pay it off. Right. And so you help them do that. Right. So that's, as far as preparation goes, it's obviously you need to know the websites to go to enter the information, finding out how much faster it'll knock it down, how you're going to present it, whether you're going to write it out or you're going to show like a PDF or something on the screen from one of those websites that shows the concept, right? Which you can do. Everybody's different in how they do it. But the key is that you're ready with it before you get back with them. Right now, by the way, we're just talking about the debt. It's the exact same thing applies for life insurance, for investments, for, if you're doing IUL, if you're doing rollovers, it's all of it. The more information that you have before you get to them, the better. Does that make sense? Okay, so now let's talk about the insurance side. Okay, now, if you remember, Jamie said after she gathered the information at the end, she said she kind of pointed out some of the highlights of things she asked, things like how much they'd be comfortable putting away every month and if they started making themselves save money and all that. She had those numbers. And then when she saw that they had a need for life insurance, that she knew most likely as she was taking the information that she was going to be showing them an IUL when she went back, right? And so a lot of times people are like, well, how much insurance do I get people? How much do I, show them when I go back? How large of a policy? How, what do I do? Okay. So let's say that as Jamie was taking down the information, I'm going to draw this. Let's see if I can do this right here. My whiteboard is completely unpredictable. So let's see if it works. All right. So let's say that their discretionary equals $2,000, which sounds like a lot, right? How many of you guys think that $2,000 discretionary sounds like a lot of money? You'd be amazed at how many people have around $2,000 of discretionary. Now, I'm not saying that they're saving $2,000 because almost everyone you sit down with has a lot of discretionary and they don't save any of it. They're paycheck to paycheck, right? So remember how Jamie said when she gathers all the information, she will actually, while she's with them, calculate how much their income is compared to what their bills are and know the discretionary number. So it's key when you're gathering the information, when you have that number, that you basically have two numbers, what their actual discretionary is, and then what their, I'll call it, commitment is. So their commitment, I'm pretty sure that Kaysen and Sarah said $500 would be comfortable for them to start when they were gathering the information. Does that make sense? So there's going to be those two things. And then what you're also going to have is their FIN number, right? So when you have all of the info, right? Let's kind of start there with the FIN, and then the FIN will bleed into the insurance need and the investments and everything else, right? Let's say we ran their numbers, and with how they wanted to retire, right? I mean, Sarah said, I think she said she needed to have $200,000 a month to be comfortable when she was talking about, right? But the bare minimum or whatever it was like I think it was like 10 grand a month or something like that. It was like just to pay their bill. Maybe it was less. Maybe it was like 6 grand a month or something like that. Somewhere in that range. I'm just trying to remember between that and all the other appointments I've done. All right. But regardless, whatever it was, let's say their FIN number came out to, they have to, for them to be able to hit that retirement goal, like the bare minimum one, they have to put away $800 a month. All right, let's say that's what their FIN number showed. Okay. So when I go back to them, I have to have all of these numbers clear in my mind. All right. So the FIN number you have to have, that how much they committed to when you first sat with them, you have to have, and what their actual discretionary is, you have to have. And the reason that it's important that you have all of these very clear in your mind before you go back to them is because you're going to be using all of these numbers the entire time to close. Right? You're basically going to take what they said and give it back to them when you get back, to make sure that you do business with them. Okay. So when you go back, the very first thing that we show people when we get back together with them is their FIN number. You know, when I start with somebody, I'm like, hey, you know, I think you guys are gonna be super excited today about what we go over with you. I'm excited to show you. I think it's you're gonna like it a lot, and we'll help you get started with that as well. But the thing I want to start with is that FIN number that we talked about. Okay. There's a lot of people asking, as a quick side note, I see in the chat a lot of people asking, where do we get the FIN number? The FIN number is actually in that I personally use the FNA on the website on my WFG, right? So when you go in to my WFG, the FNA stuff is in there, which by the way, once you're licensed, you can go in and pull up the FNA stuff from the website, and you can start messing around with it. I would start with your own, right? And enter your own, enter people you know, enter appointments you've been on, you know, your field trainers, whoever's field training you, the appointments that they go on, you know, if you can get the copies of the FNAs that they're taking and start entering those and practicing. I used to volunteer to enter them for my SMD when we were in the office, right? Because they would just log me into theirs, and then I would do all of the data entry for them, if you want to call it that. But for me, it was practice. I was learning how to mess with the numbers and tweak the numbers and figure out the FIN number and all that stuff. Right. And so the more you do it, the easier it's going to be for you figuring out what their FIN number is. Okay. It's, yeah, like Olivia said, you let the software do the math for you. It figures it out. And by the way, the numbers that it shows, a lot of people don't know this, but the number that it shows for the FIN number is if they put their money in a tax deferred account. Right. So it's kind of showing like your typical retirement accounts. So technically, if you take the number that we give them and they put it in somewhere tax exempt, they need to put less than the FIN number that we're giving them if it goes into a tax exempt account. Okay, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of the details of that. I just want you guys to know that's kind of how it does it through the software and the FNA. And so the numbers that we're bringing people, if we get them in an IUL, you know, some of the tax exempt places, it's actually going to be a lower number than what we show them. So for me personally, I'm a huge fan of under promising and over delivering. It's why I love that all of our software. I love our products. I love, you know, everything about them. I love the fact that our clients are getting higher returns than we show them in their proposals. I mean, I just love all of that. right? And so when you show somebody their FIN number and they get to putting that much away and they put it in a tax exempt place and they end up with a better retirement than they thought they were going to have because they actually put more than they needed to, you're not going to have a single person be mad at you for that. Right? What it also does is when we're bringing them a tax deferred FIN number, if they ignore us, but they have their FIN number and they start putting that money in their 401k, or whatever other place they are putting money for retirement, because you gave them that number and they get to a place where they're able to retire because they actually started putting enough in it at a certain part of their lives, that's still a win, even if they don't become a client of ours. Does that make sense? Like, you still put them on a better track than they would have otherwise been on. And it's what I love. So I love the fact that it does that. So where was I? What was I talking about before we got sidetracked with how to get the FIN? Wow. Guys, I think I'm getting old. Yeah, maybe it's jujitsu. Maybe it's the oxygen getting cut off to my brain several times a week. Okay, so back to the FIN number. All right. You have the FIN. You go in. Oh yeah, excitement, right? It's so the key when I'm starting off with somebody, I saw a couple of you guys in the chat notice, I come in with excitement, right? I'm super excited for what I'm going to show you guys today. I think you're going to be excited about it. I'm pumped up because it's, the things that were important to you, the retirement stuff we were talking about before, totally doable for you guys. Like, it's so well within your range. Like, if I'm sitting with somebody that has discretionary $2,000 of money that they're basically just kind of squandering, and their FIN is $800 a month, even if they only committed to 500, I'm gonna be like, man, you guys, is so doable for you. You have no idea, and I'm excited to show it to you, but let's start with your FIN number. And I'll go through it. I'll say, okay, your FIN was $800 a month, believe it or not. Right. So Sarah, I know you said you wanted to have $200,000 a month of income, but you're going to have to build some sort of a business or something like that to be able to do that. Right. Or you're going to have to put yourself in a position where you can save about, $100 and something thousand a month currently. Right. So if you don't have an extra $100,000 a month to save right now, let's go down to like the worst case and start there. Right. And I say that, by the way, every time. If they give me, how many guys have clients tell you like kind of these, I don't want to say unrealistic, because it's not. If they build a business, if they, get focused, if they increase their income and save a ton of it. But there's some people that you sit with that don't have a plan, that aren't in our business, that aren't in a position where ever in their lives they're going to make, more than 10 grand a year at their current jobs. And then they tell you that they need to retire with 50,000 bucks a month or 100 grand a month. Like, you literally have people tell you that, like, oh, I need to have 50. They make $50,000 a year and they say, oh, when I retire, I have to have $50,000 a month to retire the way I want. Right. So regardless, whether it's realistic or not, I will get actually the FIN for that big number too. Does that make sense? So let's say that the FIN for the ideal was $120,000 a month. I will actually tell them. See, some people don't tell them because it's unrealistic. I'll tell them. I have no problem with that. I'll be like, you know what, Sarah? For you to hit that goal, all you have to save is 120 grand a month. Right. And then, like, most of the time they'll laugh or whatever. And I'll be like, which obviously right now you can't do. It doesn't mean you're not going to be able to, but just so you know, if you want to be in a position where the interest being earned off of your investment will pay you 120 grand a month, or sorry, we'll pay you $200,000 a month for the rest of your life. You're going to have to start saving about 120 grand a month today to be able to do that. Right? So you're not there yet. Just know that as your income increases and you start making 6 figures a month, you're going to have to put that away to put yourself in a retirement place like that where your money will generate that kind of income for you. Right? Okay, so that's the ultimate goal, but obviously you can't do that now. So let's talk about worst case. Worst case for you to have your 6 grand a month, you said, you got to put away $800 a month. Right? Which is awesome because you guys have $2,000 a month discretionary. Right? Now I know that you said before that you'd only be comfortable probably just to get used to putting money away, that you wanted to save $500 a month. But it's not that much more. $800, your FIN number, you could be at least on track to worst case if you get started with $800. So something to think about. And I don't know if you guys talked about it from the last time we got together or not. Do you still feel like $500 is the most you guys would want to start with? Or do you think, knowing your FIN number now, you'd want to start with something closer to $800? What do you guys think? And you see what I just did? Like how I just stared at you guys uncomfortably and awkwardly? You do that exact same thing to them and wait for them to answer. Wait for them to look at each other, stare at each other, get uncomfortable. Now, here's what you're going to notice. Most of the time, they did talk about it. And they say, I think we could say, and you have this happen too, where you have one spouse who's like, I think we could save, 1,500 a month. And then the other one's like, no, I think we can only do 5. Right? And it creates a little argument there. By the way, let them argue too. How many guys are uncomfortable with that when that happens? You like get people arguing with each other and everything else. If they're arguing, don't take this the wrong way, but if they're arguing, it's a win. Right? And the reason it's a win is because they know they need to do something and they know they want to do something. Right? So if they're arguing about it, what it means is they're going to do something no matter what. It's just a matter of figuring out how much to get started with. Does that make sense? Right? And so you're kind of like the third party person helping them land on that decision. Okay. Regardless, when you sit and look at them, most of the time they're going to be like, yeah, we did talk about it. And actually, this is good news because we were thinking we probably wanted to start with more like 1,000 instead of 500. I'm like, awesome. Then we can do that today. It doesn't change your numbers, right? We could actually start with 1,000 today, which is great. And I'll show you how to structure that and where to put it. Right. But it's good that you're having conversations. It's good that you know that. And if putting away that 1,000 gets you on track out of the gates, what I can also do is we can run other numbers and see, hey, how much is going to get you instead of 6,000 a month? How much is going to get you to 10,000 a month? Right? Or whatever number we start with today, I'll figure that out and I'll show you what that puts you on track for. That sound fair? All right. And then we go from there. Right. So always, now, why would I start with that? Why do you think I spend so much time doing this? Like talking about the FIN number and everything else that they want to do. Because it matters, drive home what they need, get them emotionally committed, give them something that's doable. That's the client's goal. Need their buy-in, focus on their goals. Get all that. Someone said commitment. That's the closest one I'm looking for. Understand their numbers, that you're genuinely interested in helping them. You guys are so nice. Okay, they own it. These are all good answers. Okay, here's what's nobody said. That's the most important. You've kind of said it in different ways, nicer ways, ways that sound better. There it is, Roger. Close. It's you're closing them. You're closing them to start. This is your close, you guys. When you go back, the close is them committing to what they're going to do with you today. Wouldn't you rather start with that than springing out it on them at the end and hoping that they're going to say yes? Right? So you spend the time giving them their numbers, and all those things are true that you guys said. Right? Yes, it's so that they know. It's because you care. You'd want them to own it. You want them to say what they're doing. But it's getting them to say not only yes, but to committing to doing a specific amount when you start the presentation. So now it's not a surprise at the end. Okay, so you're going with them with that. And now that you have that number bleeds into every other part of the presentation. Okay, the rest of it should be pretty fast, right? Because I'm looking at this like, man, now we only have like 20 minutes to finish, and how am I going to squeeze in the insurance and the investments and the IUL and the rollovers and all of this stuff? Pretty easy. Okay, so the fin is important. The commitment is important. Now that I'm in there, now I can squeeze that commitment into whatever I have prepared. Okay, so what you need to have before you go back to people is, I mentioned the debt part. Okay, so some sort of a debt plan if they have debt, because we want to help them with that, even if we're not recommending to like some sort of third-party consolidation company. You want to have their numbers for insurance. Okay, whether it's going to be term, whether it's going to be IUL, or whether it's going to be both. And then you need to have all of the information for that insurance plan. All right, so let me go back to, so I can write this out so that you have this. Boom. Okay, before you go back, if we're showing them term, you need to have, I always run it. Honestly, you guys, the only term I've sold, and I don't even know how many years, is Transamerica. No one beats their pricing. Nobody. All right. And most of the time, I'm doing an LB with them. All right? I do a lot of living benefit term with Transamerica, as far as term goes. The only time I might use another company is if Transamerica won't underwrite them for some reason. Right. So the way that Transamerica's illustrations show their term, they actually will show it to you, whatever the face amount is. So if it's $500,000 is the face amount, it'll show it to you from a 5-year all the way to a 30-year, what the premium is going to be. Right. And it'll show you your annual, quarterly, and monthly premiums for each. Right. It'll show you in 5-year increments, 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20, 25, and 30-year term. Okay. And it does that for their regular term and for the LB. So if that's the case, I would have those numbers for your client ready to show. Okay. Or to tell them. Right. So if it's a $500,000 term, and let's say that, you're going to have, I don't show less than a 10-year. Right. So I would just do like a 10, 20, and 30. And then whatever the amount is. Right. So term on a $500,000 for 10-year might be, I don't know, $25 a month, 35 a month, and maybe 45 a month. Does that make sense? So whatever those numbers are, you want to have that before you go see them. Okay. If it's IUL, regardless of the company, you want to have you want to know the minimums. You want to know the max, And the max that you want is the guideline annual. Okay, some people show people the max as the 7-pay. You don't want to show them the 7-pay. You want to show them the guideline annual. Because the 7-pay, they can't put that amount in every year for the life of the policy. The guideline annual, they can put that amount in for the life of the policy. Okay. And then you want to know the target. All right. Those are honestly, if you're selling an IUL to people, the most important information you need to have before you get back together with them is these three things: minimum, max, and target. Okay. Now, why? Okay. We talked about their fin, right? Let's say this IUL, when we go back to this couple, is a $500,000 IUL. Let's say that the target will just call, for easy number sake, is $6,000. Right? Let's say the minimum is 2,400, right? And let's say the maximum is I don't know, 40 grand. Right? So if I'm going in and I sit down with somebody and we do the fin and we do everything like I just showed them, and let's say they tell me that they only want to start with $300. Okay, if I know that, like, and we just established they're only going to probably be doing $300 today. And no matter how much I talk about their fin, even if their discretionary is more, they're not going to start today with more than that. I can't sell them this IUL. Does that make sense? Why not? Because you have to collect at least target, right? 1/12 of target with the application to write this IUL. So if somebody says they only want to do 300, I'm not going to show them this IUL. But what I'm going to do is I'll probably cut this IUL in half. And then I'll sell them a term and an IUL. Right? Because to sell this IUL, I'd have to get at least $500 a month to do this application. Okay, so if they're not going to do 500, they're going to do 300. Then I know that if I cut this in half, I can probably collect $250. Now you have to run it really quick still to make sure. But I could probably get a term for the rest of the coverage and have it be somewhere in the range of that, the extra $50. Does that make sense? Either way, I'm going to make it work where they can still get an IUL. They'll have the insurance coverage that they need. And we're not going to be stretching them too thin on what's comfortable for them to be able to save. Okay. Now, some people like pushing them to do 500. I can tell you through personal experience, if you have somebody telling you up front that they're comfortable doing 300 and you push them uncomfortably to do 500 because it's closer to their fin, you're probably going to get a chargeback. Okay, if it's not their idea and they're not totally comfortable and they haven't saved money before, and even if they have the discretionary, when you push people that far past their comfort zone, it's probably going to charge back. Okay, now the exceptions to that are people that are in our business because they're plugging into trainings. It's in front of them all the time. The importance of saving, the importance of making sure they're putting money into their long-term accounts and all of that stuff. When you're here longer, like I was homeless, sleeping in my car, not paying other bills, but still putting $200 a month in my VUL, not missing those payments. Why? Because I was in our business. But if I was just a client and not plugged into trainings and not staying focused on long-term becoming wealthy, and I was just stuck in my job and my bills, the first thing I would have got rid of when I started sleeping in my car was my $200 payment to my VUL. Does that make sense? And that's most other that's most of our clients and their stuff, even though it should be the most important because it's life insurance covering their family and their long-term savings and all of these things. It just doesn't work that way. It's kind of human nature thing again. Okay. So it's important that if you don't know the target and all this, you're going to miss a lot more closes. All right. So you need to have this. Now that being said, when I go in, I know every single time I run a illustration. Okay. But I haven't shown an illustration to a client on an appointment. And I can't even tell you when. Okay. Now it doesn't mean that they don't all get an illustration. Everybody gets an illustration, right? Everybody looks at it, they get it in the delivery, all of that stuff, but I don't use it to sell the policy. Okay. Now, by the way, some of you do, and some of your SMDs do. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just telling you what I do. And the only reason I don't is because, and I really don't, like, some people like to email them their illustrations and have them look at it. The challenge with doing that is when they have the entire illustration in their hands and it's 48 pages long, there's a lot of pages in there that will get them second guessing themselves. Does that make sense? So you don't necessarily want that in their hands while you're talking about it. Most important thing is, what do they have to do to keep it going? How much can they put in max? And if they get into trouble down the road, how much can they go down to? Right. And that's what I have in front of me with this, with the guideline annual, the minimum, and the target. Right. Target is how much they have to be putting in for you to get paid, basically. Right. You're going to get all of your points, everything based on the target. And if you don't collect at least 1/12 of that $6,000, which is $500 a month, you're not going to get paid. Okay. Also, the target will guarantee that that contract stays in force for life. If they put in at least the target for the life of the contract, they'll always have it. Right. The minimum is if they get in trouble and they lose a job, or they, some emergency comes up and they have to skip payments and go down and drop the payment down. The minimum is how much they need to put in so that the policy doesn't lapse. Right. So that minimum no lapse is, if it's 2,400, that means they could drop down to $200 a month. Right. So it gives them flexibility, right? So if today they're going to start with, we established, oh, hey, we actually talked about it. We're going to do, we want to do 1,000. Awesome. We'll get you started with 1,000 today. That'll go in, if things get difficult, you can go all the way down to $200 a month, and when things are good, or if you have lump sums you want to put away or whatever else, you can put up to $40,000 a year into it. Right. And I say, now the cool thing is, Sarah, your plan is to increase your income and make all this money and everything else. As you guys do that, the cool thing about the $40,000 a year is that it also works like roll-up minutes. You guys remember roll-up minutes from cell phones when you used to have a certain number of minutes every single month? And if you didn't use your minutes, it rolled to the next month so that, you had more and more. It does the same thing with how much money you can put in this IUL. Right? Where 40,000, if you only put in 12,000 this year, right? That gives you $28,000 you didn't put in. Next year, because you have another 40,000 you can put in, you can actually put in 68,000 that year. Right? You only put in 12,000 again, and then that extra amount rolls over in the next year, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so, Sarah, by the time you start making a lot of money and you have these bigger lump sums and more money to put into it, you're going to have this big tax-free bucket that you can dump that money into and have it be totally tax-free for the rest of your life. How awesome is that? Right? So all selling points, right? And it's future focused. It's getting them excited about putting the money in there. It's actually getting them to want to put more in it than what they're doing, all based on these numbers. And it's all concept selling. Right? I'm not showing them that what the proposal shows they're going to have in it when they're 65 years old and how many millions or any of that stuff. I'm not showing any of that. It's all concept selling based on what they're committed to putting away right now. Is that clear for everybody? Right? So I'm using the fin, I'm using like all of it to explain these concepts, but super important. Okay, so I run the illustrations every single time. They're getting illustrations with every single policy, but I'm not using any of it other than the minimum, the max, and the target when I'm selling to the people I'm in front of. Okay, what it also does is when you know what they committed to, when you run the illustration, if I have somebody who says that they were committed to $300, and I run a $500,000 IUL and their target's $6,000, I automatically, I'm going to cut the IUL in half and I'm going to make it a smaller IUL and I'm going to run the term and I'll have those numbers ahead of time before I get there. That makes sense. So it's all figuring out so that you can still get them the coverage they need, but still get an IUL set up for them so that they have that place to put money and that's tax-free and all the things that they want to have. Okay. Last thing that I'll say real quickly, as far as numbers that you need to have before you get back with somebody. Let's see if I can do this right this time. Okay. All right. It's not there. No. Oh, dang. There it is. Yes. All right. Last thing that you need to have is if there's going to be rollovers, you need to have had all of those numbers run on the rollover before you go. Okay, now I will tell you that what I do every single time on rollovers is I have AMS or whoever's running the numbers for me. I have them run the two best companies. And when I say the two best companies, I generally give them two options. Give me the one with the highest guaranteed payout for income in retirement, right? And then give me one for the highest possibility for growth. And so I go back to my clients, generally speaking, with both of those options. So they choose which one they're going to do. Okay. And then in that illustration, when I run the illustration, what I want to see is if those are the products, like the concept of that product is their strength, right? Like I'm a big fan of Athene and the velocity for income payout. And the reason I'm a fan of it is because in distribution for payout, their income can increase every 2 years. If the market does better, let's say the market goes up 10% during that 2-year period of time while you were retired and your guaranteed income was $1,000 a month, your income will go up 10%. And so you'll get 1,100 a month for the rest of your life instead of 1,000. So it's kind of like cost of living increases in retirement, and it locks in at that. It never goes lower, and it just keeps, every time there's an increase in the market for that 2-year period, their income increases by the same percentage. I just love that concept, right? That it can go up as an income concept. Doesn't mean you have to, that's just one I like. So I have them run that one. And then I also have them run one that gives them the biggest possibility of growth. So forget about the guaranteed income. Just this one has the possibility of growing the most. And I show them those numbers. So when I go back and I show them, you need to have run the numbers. You need to understand the illustrations well enough. And then you need to know which page to go to show them those two concepts from the illustration. So what I do is I have the illustration already up on my screen, right? So I will have already pulled it up from my emails from AMS or whoever else. It'll be ready to go. And then when I screen share, I share my screen, I go to that illustration. I already have the page up that I want to show them. That shows the concept. So on the income side, like I mentioned with Athene, I'll show them, hey, you put in this amount, guaranteed, like you're going to get a bonus for moving the money over. Here's your bonus for your income in retirement. And then when you get to retirement, you know, if the market does what it's been doing, here's how much income you would have. And then as you get older, here's how it would increase. Right. And then I also show them worst case, like if the market was a dog from here moving forward, it never earned anything. Here's what your guaranteed income would be. So I show them both of those guaranteed income concepts off of the illustration. And then I say, and here's my close. If the market gets obliterated, you're guaranteed to still have X amount of income for the rest of your life. Which if you keep it where it is right now and the market gets obliterated, you're going to have nothing. Right? Or next to it. You're not going to be able to pull anywhere near as much income out of what this is guaranteeing you. Now, if the market does well along the way, now the other end of it is, this is what you could have in retirement and guaranteed income for the rest of your life. And it could keep going up after you retire. Right? Or instead of guaranteed income, there's another one that works similar, this other indexed annuity that has the highest possibility of growth if you're more concerned with just how much money you have in there instead of guaranteed. And that's this product. Can you guys still hear me okay? It just jumped out of my AirPod. And so then I'll show on the page from that other one, I just go straight to the page that shows, you know, kind of like the different options for returns. It shows like lowest, average, and highest, generally speaking. Most of them show that. I just showed, here's what you could have in it, right? So your 300 grand could turn into, you know, 1.8 million by the time you're 65. Right? With no possibility of ever losing. And then I'll also show them guaranteed, you're going to have at least this much, because most of them have a guarantee also. Right? I say, so I show those two pages. So on both of the illustrations, I only show 2 pages. I show those 2 concepts, and then I let them choose. Right? I'll give them what I think is better for them based on what they said before. Because by the way, if they have, when you gather their information, if they have a 401k, remember Jamie said, get all of those statements, because just like their debt, they don't know any of it. They don't know how much insurance they have. They don't know how their 401k is being invested. They don't even know most of the time how much they're actually putting in and how much the match is. So you need to have all those numbers, get all of that. If it's an old 401k, you need to get statements on that, see how it's invested. Then now I can go to them and be like, you know, both of these are better than where you are now because you can't lose, right? Based on our conversation before, how you said you really didn't want to lose money. And you told me before, like if I'm gathering information and they have 200 grand in an old 401k, I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, with this money, are you more concerned when you get to retirement about having guaranteed income in retirement? Or do you just want this to grow as much as possible? Which one's more important to you? So I'll ask that question when I'm gathering the information first time, so that when I go back to them, I already have what they told me in my close. So regardless, I show them both. I say, now these are both awesome, but based on what you told me before, you said income was the most important thing for you, guaranteed income. So obviously between the two, this Athene one that I showed you is going to be your best option for your income. But I did want to show you, just knowing that it's out there, that this other one exists that might be able to grow to more money. It just doesn't have the guaranteed income option that this other one has. So between the two, which one do you prefer? And then same thing, just stare at them until they answer. Right? And they say, you know what, I agree with you. I really like the Athene one. I like that guaranteed income. Let's do that one. Great. Okay. And by the way, that's my close. They just told me, like, let's do the application. Cool. We'll get the application started on that today. And here's the thing. And then we go into it. All right. So everything that you need for that appointment, that's it. So if we're doing debt, if we're doing insurance, if we're doing IUL, if we're doing rollovers, there's pretty much everything you need. The only thing I didn't get into was emergency funds and stuff like that, but Jamie kind of mentioned some of the stuff we do there. You may need to refer to somebody 65 if you're going to do, some of the betterment stuff we mentioned. If they have other mutual funds and other accounts and stocks and things that they want in the market, same thing. You're going to have to get somebody's securities license with you, maybe your SMD, maybe another trainer, to help you with some of that stuff. But these are all the majors. So as far as the information you need to have ahead of time and that preparation, it's make sure it's all done before the appointment. And honestly, if you can't get it, if let's say AMS couldn't get you the numbers before you got back together with them, I wouldn't present. You could still kind of present the concept and say they're still trying to get the numbers. Here's the concept that they're going to show, but we're going to have to get together another time to show you the actual numbers. I would actually put it up. Still maybe get a commitment to get that going in the next appointment, but I wouldn't necessarily sell it if you haven't done the preparation. Okay, so make sure you have all of that. So what that means is, as soon as you get the statements and stuff from people and know the amounts, I would make sure that you get a hold of AMS or whoever it is. Like for me, I always call Rob from Anexus, and that dude's actually the best guy I've ever seen. He gets stuff to me within an hour or two a lot of times, right? But I don't wait until the day of my appointment to have him run it. All right. So as soon as you have numbers to run, get them run, whether it's running your own proposals, have all these numbers way ahead of time. Okay. And then go into the appointment armed with that. And we can go from there. So that was a lot coming at you. We're 12 minutes past. Hopefully it was clear. But I do want to ask if there are major questions. I don't know if Olivia, you were watching for questions or.
Yeah, I've been answering the questions as they come up in the chat. So I think we got all of them.
Okay, cool. But you guys.
There was a request or a question. Do you use the step 5 flip chart?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, this wasn't on the close. But if you guys look at the step 5, the reason we do the fin, I'll just show it to you really fast if you haven't seen it yet. The reason that the fin number is so important, it's right there on the chart, right here where it says fin. Right, so I'm writing that on there. And by the way, what I put up in this box, and we'll talk about that in the close. Honestly, I don't even know if Jamie does it this way, but up here, I put the number that they committed to. So if their fin is $800, I'll put that there. And then up here in this little box, I'm going to put what they committed to. All right, so the $500 up here. Does that make sense? So these numbers are in front of them when I go back to them on the appointment. As we're having the discussion, this is in front of them, right? And then I explain the 3 buckets and all of that. But the point of this was just spending time on the fin and these numbers when I go back is so important to the appointment and the success of your appointment, getting those commitments from them, right? The commitments that you get from them combined with running the numbers to make sure that everything fits inside of it is the biggest key to you guys having success out in the field when you're running this stuff. So in between the close and the gathering of the F&A, that's why Jamie wanted me to go through this stuff with you guys. I think the reason she wanted me to do it is I keep it, I don't want to say the most simple, but I keep it the most simple as possible, if that makes sense. as you noticed. I'm not, now, by the way, like I said before, it doesn't mean it's wrong if people are selling, like I know Hannah sells with the proposal every time. Does that make sense? Like she shows the client on the screen the proposal, shows them all the numbers, shows them that stuff, and she closes that way. If that's the way that she does, Hannah's one of the best we have that we've ever had on the team. You know, as far as closing IOs, especially big IULs, right? So if that's how you're being shown, do it that way, right? I'm just telling you, bare minimum. I'm like a bare minimum guy. Bare minimum, this is the information that you have to have at the very least. But you could close with just this. I think that's another reason that she showed this. So if you close with the proposals and everything else, that's just extra and bonus and awesome. But you shouldn't be going into any appointments without at least the information I talked about today. Right. And so, like Jamie mentioned, just to reiterate, I don't like doing appointments without seeing the actual statements from clients beforehand. So it's really important that you push between your first and second appointment with them, getting all of those statements from them, like continuing to follow up and make sure they email you all of the statements, or so that you can actually have it in front of you and see exactly what they have. That way, all of your comparisons, everything are correct, especially in their retirement accounts and in their insurances. And the insurances are real important too, because if you're going to be doing, let's say they have an old whole life policy or something crappy like that you're going to be replacing, you need you can't replace it and you can't write the new policy without that replacement information on the old one that they have. So you're going to have to get it anyways to even be able to write the application. So make sure that it's the clearer, the better in the information. You have all those statements, you're running all the numbers, and then that you're going in armed with all of that information. And if you do it that way, you're going to start to see your results go up and up and up and up.